The first hush of dawn drifted over the lone mesa plains like a memory trying to find its way home, its pale gold brushing the world with tenderness as if afraid to wake anything too quickly, and in that trembling light walked Ayesha Willow, aged 20, clutching the small bundle that held everything she owned, though she suspected the wind carried more hope than she did that morning as she stepped toward the last ranch she hadn't yet begged for mercy from, wondering if perhaps even hope was tired of her by now. She had knocked on every door in town with calloused knuckles, offering to cook, clean, sweep, or chop vegetables if that meant food and a corner to sleep in, yet each door had closed with the same stiff fear. Some out of prejudice, some out of envy, some simply unwilling to let a young native woman into their guarded spaces, and every rejection left a new bruise on her spirit that she hid behind small, shivering breaths she prayed no one could hear. But when the horizon widened and the silhouette of a quiet ranch rose like a promise she didn't dare trust, she felt something loosen inside her ribs, something that might have been courage, or might have simply been desperation pretending to be brave, because she had only this place left before the cold night returned, and the idea of sleeping under the trembling juniper trees again made her fingers shake as she forced herself forward. As she stepped closer, she saw him. Colton Ward, age 30, tall and steady as a cedar trunk, repairing a broken fence with a hammer that echoed in the silence, and the way he straightened at the sound of her footsteps made her heart lurch as if caught between wanting to flee and wanting to speak, both choices equally terrifying in the fragile dawn. Colton turned, surprise flickering through his gaze before soft concern took its place, the kind that makes a person feel seen before they even speak, yet Ayesha's throat tightened around her request as if words were too heavy to carry, and when she finally whispered, "I'm looking for work or just shelter for one night," her voice broke in a way she had not allowed it to break in front of anyone in years. His brow furrowed, not in suspicion but in thought, the kind of thought that rests between fairness and instinct, and instead of the dismissal she braced for, he simply asked, "What can you cook?" in a tone so unexpectedly gentle that she nearly forgot how to breathe as the question hung between them like an invitation she wasn't sure she deserved. Ayesha told him the truth, quietly, haltingly, that she could make broth from bones and bread from nearly nothing, that she could stretch ingredients the way her mother taught her, making them bloom into flavors deeper than they had any right to be, and as she spoke, memories of the town's harsh refusals flooded back until her cheeks warmed with shame she tried to hide by lowering her gaze. She admitted pieces of her story she rarely let out. How one rancher's wife had slammed the door in her face before she even finished greeting, how another woman accused her of stealing glances at her husband, even though Ayesha's eyes had barely met his, and how several men offered work but with intentions that prickled her skin with fear, leaving her to walk away trembling, choosing hunger over humiliation as she drifted toward the wilderness again. Colton listened without interrupting, silence stretching between them like a gentle bridge instead of a wall, and when she finally paused, unable to say more, he cleared his throat softly and nodded toward the house with a calmness that felt like a hand extended, telling her to follow, though she hesitated for a moment, unsure if her trembling steps would betray how fragile she felt. Inside the ranch house, warm lamplight stroked the wooden walls with the softness of candlelit memory, and Colton motioned toward the kitchen, asking her to make whatever meal she could from whatever she found, leaving her alone with shelves of ingredients and her own shaking hands, both of which she tried to steady as she reached for a pot she hoped wouldn't rattle. Ayesha sliced vegetables with careful rhythm, mixed herbs with instinctive grace, stirred broth until the steam rose like a prayer she wasn't sure would be heard, and when the aroma slowly filled the air, thick with warmth and quiet yearning, she found herself wondering, against all caution, if this moment might change something small, maybe even something vast. Colton returned, tasted the stew with a contemplative slowness that made her pulse throb in her ears, and when he set the spoon down, he looked at her with an expression so unreadable she felt her knees weaken before he finally said, "If you'll stay, the kitchen is yours," with a simplicity that made her exhale as if she had been holding her breath for days. She tried to speak but her voice dissolved. She tried to thank him but tears welled too quickly, slipping down her cheeks before she could stop them, and the fact that he didn't look away, didn't flinch, didn't pity, only deepened the trembling in her chest as she realized his kindness wasn't a momentary impulse but something steadier, something rooted deep. When he led her to a guest room inside the house, not the barn, not a shed, not a corner of the floor, Ayesha stopped in the doorway, overcome by the softness of the quilt, the clean scent of cedar, the simple dignity of being offered a bed instead of a patch of earth, and she whispered a hoarse "thank you," unsure how to hold all the gratitude pressing at her heart. Days slipped into rhythm. Ayesha's humming drifted through the kitchen each morning, her gentle footsteps stirring warmth into the quiet spaces of the ranch, while Colton found himself pausing in his work just to listen, drawn by something he couldn't name, something as fragile as it was powerful, like the first breeze before spring. She noticed the small ways he tried to make her life easier without drawing attention to it, fixing the chairs she used, leaving extra firewood outside her door, brushing dust from his boots before entering the kitchen out of respect, and each gesture stitched itself into the fabric of her days, leaving her wondering why such gentleness felt more dangerous than the world's harshness. Their hands brushed once when she handed him a cup of coffee, the accidental touch burning like a spark neither meant to ignite, and instead of pulling away immediately, both lingered a fraction too long, breath caught between question and fear, until Ayesha lowered her eyes with a shy, unsteady smile that seemed to follow him long after he stepped outside. But the world outside was not gentle, and town gossip began to coil like smoke around Colton's name, whispers that he was harboring that native girl, that she would bring trouble, that maybe she already had, and each time he went to town for supplies, he returned quieter, jaw set tighter, though he tried not to burden her with the weight he carried. When Ayesha herself ventured into town for flour one afternoon, she felt the sting of cold stares like needles against her skin, women shifting away, a child pulled aside, murmurs blooming behind her as though she were a storm instead of a girl just trying to live, and when she returned to the ranch, her composure crumbled the moment the door closed behind her. Colton found her sitting by the hearth with her face buried in her hands, and without a word, he removed his hat and gently placed it on her head, a gesture so warm and quietly protective that Ayesha's breath trembled against the fabric as she looked up, seeing something in his eyes she hadn't expected. Not pity, not sympathy, but belonging. Then came the night of the storm. The sky split open with thunder that rattled the windows, rain lashing the ranch like an angry river, and Ayesha, startled into old memories of storms that once tore through her childhood camp, sat trembling in the corner until Colton approached with a lantern whose glow softened even the shadows trembling around her. He sat beside her, speaking in low, steady tones about how he'd always hated storms too, how they reminded him of nights spent alone in cold cabins when his parents passed, and the honesty in his voice unraveled something inside her until she found herself leaning into the warmth of his shoulder without realizing she had moved. Thunder cracked again, and he brushed a stray, wet strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering for one dangerous heartbeat before he pulled back sharply, as though the closeness scared him more than the storm, yet neither of them moved farther away as their breaths mingled in the lamplight, thick with a tenderness neither dared speak aloud. From that night on, something shifted, gentle, unspoken, inevitable, Colton building her a small herb garden behind the house, Ayesha sewing new reins for his horse with delicate beadwork, their hands touching now without the same sharp startle, as though their hearts had learned to trust the nearness instead of fearing it. But the town did not soften, and one evening gossip reached its cruel peak, accusations that she was seducing him, that he'd lost judgment, that she was using him for shelter, and though Colton dismissed the words with quiet fury, Ayesha felt the old fear returning, whispering that she was only a burden to the one person who had shown her grace. So she packed her small bundle before dawn, wiping tears with trembling fingers as she stepped onto the porch, determined to leave before she ruined his reputation further, whispering apologies he would never hear. But as she reached the gate, a firm hand caught hers, warm and certain despite the rain beginning to fall again. Colton stood there, chest rising and falling with worry, eyes searching hers as if trying to understand why she would leave without letting him fight beside her, and when she finally broke apart in front of him, whispering, "No one wants me, no one wants to hire me, no one wants me anywhere," he swallowed hard, the storm softening behind him as though listening. "I want you," he said, voice raw, steady, and shaking all at once. "Not as my cook. As my wife." And the words crashed over her with the force of every kindness she'd ever longed for yet never expected, leaving her breathless in his arms as the rain softened to a hush around them, as if the sky itself wanted to witness her disbelief melting into hope. Their wedding was small but proper. Colton insisted on that with quiet dignity. Held beneath the preacher's porch as soft sunlight broke through the clouds, Ayesha wearing a soft blue dress threaded with delicate beadwork, Colton in a clean suit that made him look both solemn and impossibly tender as he took her hands. When they exchanged vows, Ayesha's voice trembled like a leaf in the first wind of spring, and when he leaned in to kiss her, the world seemed to pause, not for spectacle, not for permission, but for the simple miracle of two souls choosing each other despite the quiet cruelty of the world outside. Days turned warmer after that. Breakfasts shared in laughter, evenings spent brushing her hair while she stitched his gloves by lamplight, their hands always finding each other beneath the settling night, as though seeking reassurance that the life they'd built was real, was safe, was theirs. Even townfolk, over time, softened the way old wood softens after years of weathering, greeting Ayesha with hesitant smiles as they tasted her cooking at gatherings, realizing the danger they feared had never been danger at all, only difference misunderstood until kindness revealed its true shape. And every evening, as the sun slipped behind Lone Mesa in a blaze of amber and rose, Ayesha and Colton sat together on the porch, fingers intertwined, hearts settling into a peace earned through storms and courage and the simple miracle of being chosen, each night reminding them that even the harshest world can soften in the presence of love. If you walk past their ranch at twilight, you might hear a soft laugh drifting through the air, or the quiet thrum of a song Ayesha hums when she feels most at home, or see Colton leaning toward her with an expression that holds the weight of every promise he ever kept. And perhaps that's the lesson woven through their days, the one I leave with you now like a lantern lit for your own path, that sometimes one open door, one unexpected kindness, one gentle voice answering a desperate plea is enough to rewrite an entire life, and if you ever feel the world closing its doors on you, remember this. Somewhere out there is a place where your soul will not be turned away, somewhere. A yes is waiting to change everything you thought you'd lost, and sometimes the heart finds home exactly when it dares to hope again, softly, like dawn returning after the longest night.